And we're live. How's it going, everyone? Today I'm joined by one of my fellow co-founders, Ben Antes, and we're going to be doing a market recap on Binance Smart Chain, DeFi, and kind of general crypto markets. How's it going, Ben?
Dude, it's going great. The market's, fucking juiced. So I am equally juiced over here. Well, let's
I
be
know.
real.
And I think the thing that can't go without ignoring is kind of like this biggest catalyst that's going on, the London hard fork, the specifically the EIP 1559 proposal, which has turned ETH now deflationary.
Yeah, I wanted to share some stats I was looking at. And, obviously we knew this was coming, but I didn't really think about the scope of it, right? Like kind of like, okay, so some amount of transaction fee gets burned. That's great. On ultrasound.money, and I don't know if we want to like pin that somewhere so people can check it out later.
Yeah.
6,172 Ethereum have been burned. And just to do some quick math here, let's see. So 6,100 times what's the price of ETH? Basically 2,900.
Yep, right under 3K.
That's $17.7 million worth of Ethereum. And this has been in a day and a couple hours. So like 28 hours, 29 hours. So
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's
and I
nutty.
mean, the market's reflecting that, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and pop my stream on here, and I have Ethereum on an 8-hour chart. And like into this hard fork event, Ethereum has kind of just been straight bid since kind of the end of July here. Ethereum's up nearly 55%, and we're coming into this resistance here. It's this 3K level again that everybody kind of loves pointing out. We have a couple tops up here, and now we're coming right back into it. So this looks extremely kind of healthy in the terms of technical analysis, however much you want to weigh that. And so we're kind of just coming into resistance here, and this just looks really good. I don't know if I specifically would be a buyer right under 3,000, but there's really nothing stopping this from going higher, especially with kind of this bullish event that's gone on.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment too much on the charts because that's not exactly what I pay attention to. But I don't know. This weekend's probably going to be ridiculous. It always is, and thin volume with a lot of bullish sentiment. We could see actually, I would think a lot of price movement up over the weekend to then probably pull back by Monday or something.
Exactly, yeah. And then just outlined here, like this obviously isn't the holy grail or anything, but this kind of in this area, 2,800 to 2,600 doesn't look like a bad buy. At the end of the day, as long as we don't really retrace this news, because this is kind of the news of the event here, we broke out even higher. Like Ethereum looks extremely strong. And this is coming off of kind of all this bearish regulation we've had, the crackdown on miners, kind of lots of things going on with derivatives, specifically kind of Binance has been circled by a ton of regulators global. And we got this massive kind of sell-off and consolidation. But it's kind of turning into the old news now. We were talking about this a little bit. Like Binance is now limiting derivatives for all their users. I think they're lowering everything to 20x leverage. FTX has already done the same. So the exchanges are being proactive on these things. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of things going on, but the market is liking it. Like even today, Binance announced something about limiting or halting some sort of derivatives products in Hong Kong. So now it's kind of the narrative behind that story is like exchanges are switching to more kind of proactive compliance and getting ahead of these things. And we have Cami down here messaging in Discord, getting on the live stream, which is hilarious. Cami is one of our other co-founders.
Man. Well, you know what? We had like a horrible bearish news cycle, and that lasted couple months, and now it's doing what you'd expect it to do and like turn positive. Like JP Morgan is popping up constantly with new offerings to their clients, ETFs all around the world getting approved, Ethereum futures trading. Yeah, it just goes on. And this is starting to feel like when was it? It's hard to remember at this point, like beginning of this year, right? With all that bullish news coming up and then the price following it perfectly. And the Binance stuff, maybe what they're doing will actually be good for the prices. I don't know. Less like high leverage trading means a more stable market.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think what's important is just kind of that these exchanges in Binance, it's not that they're trying to skirt regulations. It's just that these things aren't really in place. So as more information comes out, as these things get more versed and developed, these exchanges are trying to be compliant. Something that is massive, very prevalent, is kind of the latest bit of regulation that's coming out. And this is coming out of the US, and it's this infrastructure bill. So for those who aren't familiar, it's like a $550 just general infrastructure bill in the United States, and crypto is a small portion of this bill. It's supposed to make up like 28 to 30 billion dollars of the bill. Like senators or the US government wants to fund part of the bill with crypto taxes, and there's kind of just this who is burdened with kind of reporting taxes, and the easy answer is brokerages must report like transactions and taxes, but where there's a lot of uncertainty is what is defined as a brokerage. So currently there's a couple different drafts running around. So the first one, the initial proposal that went out, a lot of crypto people did not like that because it was just clunky. It didn't understand crypto terms. It looked like it was written by people outside of crypto. A couple senators came back and verified, and pretty much what it comes down to is miners, validators, software developers aren't burdened with kind of reporting these taxes. And this was very good. All the crypto people were pretty happy about this because you don't want someone like the PancakeSwap developers having to report taxes to the US. It's just not really viable. Or more specifically, like if someone is validating transactions on Ethereum or BNB, is it really their job to report these? They're not really facilitating the transactions. They're just verifying them. And so the interesting part is another proposal came back after the fact, and it's now trying to take out software developers and validators, which could be very harmful towards kind of Ethereum and Binance Smart Chain, these proof of stake chains, because we don't really know what these tax implications are going to look like, let alone for decentralized exchanges like PancakeSwap, where if this goes through, they might have to start reporting all these trades to the IRS or however that's going to go down. So this is kind of a very interesting proposal and bill that kind of the market is all watching. And I think the vote is going through on this Saturday. Go ahead, Ben. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I get what they're doing, right? Because if you think about how the tax system works now is, let's say you have a TD Ameritrade account. The IRS actually relies on the taxes reported from TD Ameritrade to square up with your tax return. And then if you didn't report it, they would just bill you for it, right? It's a very simple system. And obviously it's not super fast. You might get a bill 3 years later that like, oh, you didn't pay this. So when it comes to like crypto exchanges, 100% should be the exact same way, right? They got to report I don't know the exact tax document, but provide the tax document to the IRS so the IRS can square up your tax return and everything's good. With DeFi, I don't think they understand it, and they don't understand like what's actually going on, because if you put yourself in a 60-year-old regulatory body, right, and you're just thinking this is how we do it, so yeah, PancakeSwap is the exchange, they need to give us the tax info. That makes a lot of sense until you actually understand what the heck's going on, and then it no longer makes sense, right? So I don't know, maybe there's a way to do this where, KYC gets introduced to wallets. I know a lot of people don't want that. I would question, why don't you want that? It's just because it's crypto, and this will probably be like unpopular, so whatever, have at me. Just because it's crypto doesn't mean it doesn't need to follow like the rules of the laws that we've had for decades, right? 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great technology, and it cuts out the institutions and makes things cheaper and more accessible, but it still needs to be compliant. So there's got to be some way to make it compliant without killing it. And maybe that's a developer question. Like PancakeSwap needs to figure that out.
Definitely. And so it's kind of all eyes on this proposal and what this will go through. It's pretty up in the air. There's both of these drafts kind of floating around. So no one really knows what will happen. That's something definitely to stay tuned there. Something that I think is notable is that the market doesn't really seem like they're kind of discounting this news on the back of the London hard fork. Like Bitcoin is rallying, Ethereum's pushing back into 3,000. So it doesn't look like the general market's too concerned about this, but it definitely could be a catalyst. A pretty notable tweet I saw a couple days, Suzu, the founder of Three Arrows Capital, kind of a very large market participant, is this is a little bit different news. This is regarding SEC Commissioner Gensler. He had a speech at some sort of security summit. And he pretty much was just saying DeFi and ETH are mooning despite this regulatory FUD. And it's kind of just like, I think it's funny. He labeled it as like the market calling his bluff. And it very much looks like that. The market is kind of just running away with this London hard fork news, tons of buyers. And so that's very exciting there.
Yeah, I think it kind of is like a bluff call because they just don't get it yet. So even if they say, okay, we want these to be brokerages, it's going to take years to sort out all of this. It's not like they're just going to show up at, I don't know, Chef Hops's front door, right, with a subpoena. Like that's not what happens. And by the time this thing further develops, I know, like KYC will probably be more commonplace in DeFi anyway, and it's going to be okay. I think. And also, I think the market is just exhausted of bad news, quite frankly. I just don't think anyone that's still in isn't going to be shaken out at this point by further regulatory questions or something. I think that's paid its course.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what is interesting is we have this massive leg up on ETH here. And just looking from the bottom, from July 20th to now, we're up about 67%.
It's ridiculous.
And obviously this is kind of, you can really contribute this to the catalyst of the London hard fork. And it's incredible, the amount of ETH that's burning. So it's very easy to kind of attribute this news to that market movement. Something I have noticed is kind of BNB and the Binance Smart Chain has been lagging Ethereum DeFi a bit. So if we go to that same bottom from July 20th, BNB is only up about 36%. And I think this is kind of just interesting. This isn't the first time we've seen BNB lag behind Ethereum, but I think there's like a couple reasons why this is potentially happening. And first of all, it's just like all eyes are on Ethereum. Like they have this insane upgrade that now makes it deflationary and it's working, which is super cool and kind of probably the main reason for this catalyst. And then I think another reason potentially why BNB is just lagging a bit in the short term is kind of because of all the Binance regulation that's been going around. Binance obviously has a lot of like influence on the Binance Smart Chain in the sense where in general, if you talk to a lot of crypto and ETH people, they are going to kind of attribute Binance with Binance Smart Chain, and it's in the name. So no matter the fact that it's kind of independently owned and there's a validator system, there always is going to be some sort of correlation between these two. And I think this is kind of between the regulation and the ETH news, we are seeing a little bit of lag on the Binance Smart Chain. But if anything, all that matters is DeFi as a whole is starting to rally and do well again. So I think this is just kind of like a temporary lag. Binance Smart Chain is kind of behind the London hard fork news. Like the hard fork and EIP 1559 is much more interesting at the moment. But at the end of the day, the market's showing strength and DeFi is DeFi. So typically we'll see kind of BNB and Smart Chain DeFi start to catch up.
Yeah, I think it's gonna rally will continue its rally, and I really think when it breaks out, it's going to break out. That's what BNB does. Is remember we did one of our weekly updates. This was months ago, and you were like, I think BNB was at like 290, and you're like, when this breaks 300, it's just going to go straight to 400. And in like 24 hours, it broke 300 and went straight to 400.
Yeah, it was like in here somewhere, and like I was expecting like a 30-40% move. And it did like 60-70 in the same time frame. So
yeah. And then if you look at BSC a little longer term, some of the news that doesn't get circulated as much as like, the CEO of Binance US had that interview with Forbes talking about the planned integrations of their platform with BSC. And this isn't just some like, foreign exchange talking about doing it. This is a US exchange with a former US regulator at the front as CEO. And, and so an event like that where Binance US gives, direct link to BSC is going to be awesome. Yeah, we have an article out for it also.
Definitely. Yep, that's exactly what I'm pulling up right here. I'm going to drop this in chat. But I think this is extremely notable that we kind of have US crypto entities pushing for the Binance Smart Chain. So I think this is massive. I'll just drop that article in there for anyone who's curious on that. As for you, Ben, kind of with this idea that BNB is lagging a little bit, we have extremely low volatility. Like there's not a lot going on here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a break soon. It sounds like we're both leaning towards the upside. What kind of tokens are you sort of looking at? What are you farming right now?
So the yield farming. Well, I put out an article of my August picks, and obviously these were, my first pick on there was ETH BNB. To me, it's just like the most probably low risk but high reward pair you can throw out there. Like I just don't see how that's not going to do well together. Some smaller plays were Wheat, and that's with Growth DeFi. And when I wrote that article, it was at 250. And even before the article even made it through our editorial process, it was at like $4, pretty sure. So those guys just have real interesting tokenomics. I like it. It's a newer platform. Yeah, you want to pull up that?
Yeah. And what is kind of like the fundamentals of this, or what are they? What is the mission statement, boilerplate?
The thing that interests me was their yield optimizer, and instead of doing a buyback and burn with like a percentage of the cake earn, like let's say you have a cake BNB vault, typically it earns cake, and the platform would use some of that cake earned to buy back wheat and burn it. That's a typical process there. They actually take a portion of the cake and put it in its own fee collector vault, is what they call it. And then all the future cake earned from that is used to buy back and burn. So it's creating this like, I don't know, cyclical, eternal process. As long as cake is earning cake, it'll be earning cake to burn wheat.
Gotcha.
Right. So to me, that was just, I don't know. I like new, interesting stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, in the past 8 days, it's up 86%. So it's going well. It is down from some significant all-time highs, but I mean,
this
is what yield farms look like. That you have this initial token generation event, and then you just start to have these yields start to set in. You can't be paying out thousands% of APY, and if demand kind of starts to diminish like it has in the past couple months, a lot of yield farms look like this.
Yeah, and I did comment to you. I was like, oh man, look, this pick doubled since I wrote the article, but it's also kind of like turning into up-only season. And I probably could have thrown a dart at a list of tokens and had excellent results, right? So I'm definitely not trying to take total credit. The other one I like is Wall Street Bets.
The app, correct? Because we were talking about this.
Correct. Yeah, they are cross-chain working with Mirror to bring synthetic stocks some yield farming action. And the timing of it is just really good because Uniswap just delisted all the Mirror assets. So, the synthetic stock assets. So I like this one. They're just, I think they just in the last day or two got the first few stocks available on their app on Ethereum. And also this one took a giant hit in the correction,
Yep.
which to me is like they're still here. You know, one of the things is if they're still here developing and they're rolling out new stuff, I'm down to get involved after the massive correction, right?
Exactly. And this isn't like a specific thing to these tokens. Like I can come here and I can pull up Cake.
No, you're supposed to make me look like a genius here with my pick.
No, I am gonna make you look like a genius. You can pull up Cake and like this did very similar if I throw it on log scale. Like there is a period of Cake where it was just struggling. Like these are what these charts look like. You had these initial sort of farming periods. They launched when kind of the market was hot, and then you just kind of had this meltdown with all the yield farming rewards. And this was what, over a period of almost 3 months. It's kind of similar here. Like you have this period of pretty much 3 months, May to August, and now you're starting to get the bid pick back up on these. I will note that you might not see all-time highs again as more tokens come out. So the market cap is what you want to be looking at, not necessarily looking at the price.
Yeah.
Because what I would do is I would actually go back and look at what the market cap was at back at all-time highs, because there's definitely a lot more tokens in circulation. But overall, a lot of coins look like this, and it's nice to see them start catching these bids here. And like these are notable moves if you recently got in. Like this is a 20% move in a couple days.
Yeah, so I'm up like 70% in wheat, 20% in Wall Street bets. And again, it's a lot of it's just like throwing darts at a dartboard.
It's extremely speculative.
But also, you know, and of course there's the rest of them, Auto, Beefy, Cake, you know, all the ones from the first cycle. I feel great about those. If the team is still here developing, it's probably not a bad spot to be.
Exactly.
Right? Did they survive the pullback? That's the question.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely notable. Kind of just touching on here what I've been paying attention. Well, first we can just look at Beefy. Very sort of similar thing, but it's alive, it's doing well, and it's building. I also really like how Beefy has stepped up their kind of multi-chain optimizer strategy. They also have that new token Moonpots, which has been doing incredibly well. But I think very
super cool. I'm a fan of that project.
Yeah, and that's been incredibly successful so far. What I'm interested in is kind of just like the entire first, it was like this massive play to earn craze, and we kind of saw these insane run-ups on Crypto Blades, the skill token, and Axie Infinity. Crypto Blades has had a mean pullback. It's kind of retraced this entire leg higher here. Actually, last night I hopped on the auction and I bought a couple of characters just for shits and giggles. So that's kind of interesting. But this play to earn was incredible. We had this sort of period in time where Bitcoin was consolidating on 30K, and these tokens went ahead and they rallied like, well, we won't even take this first leg. Like this second leg was 400, 500%, which is incredible. And like from the bottom, it's even more. Even till now, people who were in this token in early July are still up multiples of 20, which doesn't even make sense in traditional markets. And I think it's notable, right? Like seeing this correction, a 76% correction, you guys have to be expecting these things in these nano cap tokens, because you don't just get 1,000x rallies without any sort of correction. So these things are kind of bound to happen. And I think this is sort of a great example.
Oh, someone wants to see the baby Doge chart.
Lovely. We could pull that up.
Yeah, let's check it out. But I agree. Like these, I mean, even larger caps just pulled back 75 to 90% over the last couple of months.
Exactly. We put out an article on can you lose money yield farming? And this was just like a very general kind of article. And we put it out near the bottom at like 30K. And it was just like a harsh reality of yield farming. You have these projects that everyone coins as blue chips. It's like your Pancake Swap, your MDEX, your BEEFY. All of these projects, I mean, we can just look real quick. And I haven't forgot about Baby Doge yet.
Didn't K go from 40 to 10 during that correction?
Exactly.
So a 75% pullback.
So kind of the main idea here is like, this is just inherently risky markets. Like these, you really shouldn't be risking more than you can afford to lose, just in the sense that these very well will go 90 to 100% drawdowns. Like if you have the most prominent token in the ecosystem correcting 80%, it's just a risky market. Like that's just the nature of DeFi, and it's a small scale and very speculative.
Yeah, and you definitely have to have a decent time frame if you want to, like if you're a cake holder at 40, you might very well still be a cake holder because the project is fundamentally doing great. Yeah. So you just gotta not need the money next month, right? And then you gotta sell for an 80% loss.
And similar situation here for Baby Doge, right? Like it's kind of just consolidating down here, and it's doing its thing. Something that I would just like to point out, and I think the easy way of doing it is like a rising tide's going to lift all boats. If BNB breaks up, something like Baby Doge will probably follow suit. This doesn't look the strongest currently, but it looks fine. Like it's just doing its thing. It's also like it's very like technical analysis already has a ton of speculation behind it. So charting something like a token that's been out for a handful of months is extremely hit or miss. But I mean, Baby Doge, it's holding up price, which is good. And I think the main sort of thing here is that Ethereum DeFi is doing extremely well. There's kind of no reason that Binance Smart Chain isn't going to start to follow again.
Yeah, it'll do fine. And I feel like there's been times before where ETH is going to be the alt leader and it's going to break out first. And then all of a sudden, the rest of the market just pumps with it, right? And also, I think it's important to note that Bitcoin keeps pumping, which tends to actually like kind of mute the rest of the market in a sense.
Definitely.
Which it's currently not muting Ethereum. So, but that's the hard fork deal, probably more.
Yeah, I'm actually curious to see how they're performing against each other. I mean, this is an extremely messy chart. So
it'd be nice to see an ETH Bitcoin decoupling happen.
Yeah, it looks like they're kind of just consolidating. Like they're both pumping together is what this looks like. But yeah, overall, I mean, it just looks solid. BNB is lagging a little bit, but it's coming into resistance. Fairly low volatility recently. So a squeeze to the upside was not out of the question, especially when we have things like Ethereum DeFi performing like this. I will say this is into pretty significant resistance, so I wouldn't be aping in long here, but that's just me. Like this very well could break out. And kind of just to start to get to the tailwind of this, because we've touched on like the main sort of catalyst, the London hard fork, kind of this infrastructure bill, the past sort of regulatory, you could call it FUD. I kind of like it like the regulatory storm. You had all this news on Binance mining come out. And that narrative kind of seemed to pass. And we're kind of now starting to absorb this bullish news. So general markets look strong. I'm curious if anyone in chat has any sort of specific recommendations. If not, we can just probably wrap this up. And we're going to be doing these every week. So next Friday, we're going to be doing the same thing, looking at the notable events, kind of touching on the market, all of that good stuff.
And everything's going to be up 20% next Friday. Calling it.
I don't
know. I'm like full bull mode right now. It's exciting. It's really exciting. It's been a depressing few months. So
yeah, it's definitely nice to get this bid up into here. So it looks like we're going to close this off here. Thanks everyone for coming out. We're going to be doing these a lot more often. And yeah, it should only get more exciting. You're going to want to stay tuned to these things, get the latest updates. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube. That's going to be the best way to kind of tune into these live streams. We also do a ton of live streams with prominent projects in the Binance Smart Chain. So we've done, for the person who wanted the Baby Doge chart, we've actually done a live stream with Baby Doge. We've done one with Crypto Blades, Moonpots, Ape Swap, all sorts of things. So go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube because there'll be a ton of more of those. And you guys can also check out any future live streams.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And I'll talk to you later.
Yep, definitely.
See ya.